Accusation hit me harder than any slap ever could, not because of the words themselves, but because of the sound that followed. It began with a sharp crack of microphone feedback, the kind that slices through a ballroom thick with polite laughter and expensive perfume. Then came the ripple, champagne glasses trembling, shoes shifting on marble, and the frantic, insect-like clicking of smartphones lifting toward me. I stood beneath Riverside Hall's golden chandeliers, the stage lights washing my face in blinding white. I was seconds away from receiving an award I never sought, a lifetime honor meant to celebrate my years as a singer. Instead, I found myself frozen, staring at Evelyn March as she transformed her smile into a blade. "There are things the public deserves to know," she said, her voice smooth as polished glass, "about Cecil Scott and about what he did with his late wife's estate." A silence fell so heavy it almost rang. From somewhere to my left, a woman gasped. From the right, "Is this real?" Behind me, "Did he take money from his wife?" Evelyn rested a hand dramatically over her heart. "I'm sorry you had to hear it like this," she continued, "but the truth always splits open eventually. Cecil mismanaged Maya Scott's trust, redirected her assets, hid transactions, and I have proof." The ballroom erupted, chairs shifted, forks scraped against plates. Phones rose into the air like a swarm of judgment. Every eye in the room pinned me to the floor. The words struck me, cold, precise, rehearsed. A public slap delivered in front of hundreds. I felt heat along my jawline, not from shame, but from the sudden clarity that this moment wasn't spontaneous. It was staged, engineered. Every breath Evelyn took had been planned, yet still I didn't react. I didn't storm the stage, I didn't shout, I didn't defend myself. I slowly placed my untouched champagne flute on a nearby table, the glass making a soft, deliberate click that somehow cut through the rising storm of whispers. Then I straightened my jacket, inhaled once, and walked away. Calm, controlled, silent, no man screaming in panic has ever convinced a crowd, but a man walking away, a man refusing to break on command, that terrifies people. Behind me, the ballroom swelled with noise, speculation, outrage, cameras recording every angle of my exit. Evelyn's voice dripped through the sound system like syrup as she continued spinning her story. But when the heavy doors shut behind me, the world went quiet, just a long hallway, my heart beat, and the weight of a secret I'd ignored for far too long. I exhaled, my voice barely above a whisper spoken to the empty hall or maybe to Maya herself. "To understand this, we go back 5 minutes into one secret I never opened. I remember exactly where I was 5 minutes before my life publicly shattered. Backstage at Riverside Hall, in a narrow corridor that smelled faintly of hairspray, velvet curtains, and the metallic tang of stage lights warming up. The hum of the audience leaked through the walls, a low, anticipatory rumble like the ocean pressed against glass. I was doing what I always did before stepping on stage, humming scales under my breath, feeling the vibration settle into my chest. 48 years old, still treating my voice like a fragile instrument, still believing that if I cared for it, it would never betray me. Funny how I never made that same assumption about people. I closed my eyes and tried to center myself. Tried to push aside the memory of Maya's final moments, the way her fingers trembled as she held my wrist, her voice barely a breath. "Cecil, don't let anyone touch the land, promise me." The land, the locked farm, the one place she never let me visit, I still didn't understand, and I still hadn't gone. A soft laugh cut through my thoughts. Evelyn March. She was standing a few feet away, pretending not to watch me, her smile stretched wider than usual, too polished, too rehearsed. The kind of smile someone wears when they already know the ending of a story that hasn't been told yet. "You ready for your big moment?" she asked, tapping her clipboard against her thigh. "Just another stage," I said quietly. "Not tonight," she replied. "Tonight is legacy." Legacy, a word that tasted like metal in my mouth. I nodded politely, but something in her tone lodged itself in my ribs. I'd worked with Evelyn for 3 years, long enough to recognize when she was performing. And tonight, she wasn't just performing, she was glowing, buzzing with a strange, electric anticipation. She turned and walked toward her team, two assistants and Ray Holloway, her PR chief, lowering her voice to a fast, urgent whisper. I saw Ray stiffen. One assistant pulled out her phone immediately. Another scribbled something in a notepad and avoided my eyes. A small alarm bell rang in my chest. I'd lived through enough industry betrayals to know the look of backroom plotting. This was it. Still, I didn't move toward them, didn't ask questions, didn't confront. I only watched. Evelyn glanced back at me once, her eyes sharp, calculating, then flashed that too wide smile again before turning away. My stage manager approached. Mr. Scott, you're on in 30 seconds. The director wants a camera close-up as you walk onto the stairs. You okay with that? Sure, I said, though something in me tightened. He handed me the handheld mic, cold metal, familiar weight, but it felt heavier tonight, like it already knew what was coming. I inhaled, grounding myself in the rhythm of my heartbeat. The crowd roared faintly as someone finished speaking on stage. My cue was near, 30 seconds, 20, 10. I rolled my shoulders, clearing my throat lightly, forcing myself to focus on my set, the tribute song to Maya, the acceptance speech I'd rewritten 3 times, the promise to honor her memory. But as I stepped toward the wings, I caught one final glimpse of Evelyn whispering into Ray's ear and Ray nodding with a nervous, guilty smile. 5 minutes later, she would be standing on stage. 5 minutes later, she would pull the pin on the grenade she'd been hiding behind her back. And 5 minutes later, my world would explode. I built a life out of sound long before I ever understood silence. Tour buses, hotel balconies, the hollow backstage corridors of stadiums, that was my world. I started singing professionally at 19 when my voice still had the reckless shine of youth and my dreams were loud enough to drown out anything sensible. By my 20s, I had 2 international tours under my belt. By my 30s, a pair of Grammy nominations. And by my 40s, I had become the kind of man people recognized before they knew where they'd seen me. But nothing in my life mattered half as much as the night I met Maya. It was at a small acoustic gig, barely 50 chairs, a brick wall behind the stage, soft amber lights hanging from fishing wire. I was performing a stripped-down version of a song I had never released, one I'd written on a lonely night in Chicago. The moment I finished, I heard gentle clapping from the back of the room. Slow, steady, deliberate. When I looked up, I saw a woman with dark hair pulled into a loose braid, leaning forward with a smile that made me feel seen in a way fame never had. After the show, she approached me. "You sing like someone who writes to survive," she said. I remember laughing. "I don't know how else to do it." That was Maya, sharp as truth, soft as mercy. We fell into each other's lives quickly, not with the dizzy chaos of new love, but with a quiet understanding, like we were picking up a conversation we'd left unfinished in another lifetime. She wasn't part of the music industry. She was a wildlife researcher, grounded, steady, thoughtful, the opposite of everything fame demanded of me, and she saved me in small ways first. She taught me how to cook more than 2 dishes, how to sleep without leaving the TV on, how to look people in the eye instead of performing for them. But her favorite subject, the one she returned to again and again, was the land. She talked about the little farm she inherited from her grandmother. 4 acres, a creaky barn, a house with blue shutters, a fenced-off pasture. She described it like it was a living creature, a place full of memory, a place that hummed with something quiet and essential. "Promise me one thing," she said once, pressing her forehead to mine. "We never sell that land, no matter how much money someone offers." I promised, easily, carelessly. Back then we were invincible, but in 10 years of marriage she only took me there twice. Both times she seemed both peaceful and troubled, walking the property like she was memorizing it. She kept a spare key on a necklace but never let me hold it. And still I didn't ask why, I didn't push. I trusted her completely. Or maybe I avoided the truth because I didn't want to know how much she was protecting. When she got sick, she tried to tell me something about the land, the farm, the danger circling it, but her words blurred together under the hiss of oxygen tubes. And now she was gone, and I was left with a promise I didn't understand, a locked farm I had ignored, and a regret I carried like a stone in my throat. If I had listened to her sooner, maybe Evelyn's words wouldn't have hit me so hard. Maybe none of this would have exploded the way it did. Grief is a strange kind of silence, not the peaceful kind, the crushing kind, the kind that sits on your chest and refuses to let you breathe. After Maya died, silence followed me like a second shadow. It stretched across every hotel room, every half-packed suitcase, every stage I stepped onto and then immediately stepped off of because my throat wouldn't open. I canceled 27 shows in a row. My agent called it a career stall. I called it survival. The industry didn't care. It never does. It only smells two things: success and weakness. Within a week, executives, managers, and smiling opportunists circled me like vultures on warm pavement. They sent flowers with hidden contracts tucked between the petals. They sent emails disguised as condolences but laced with offers that just happened to require immediate signature. You need to keep moving, Cecil, they said. Tour again, record again, capitalize on the sympathy before it fades. Sympathy. They said it like it was currency. I remember one night vividly standing alone in a penthouse suite overlooking the city, staring at a tray of untouched room service. The room was too clean, too staged, too bright. A life built for a man who no longer existed. My phone buzzed. Lucy. I almost didn't answer. She'd been calling me for days, pushing past my grief with her practical, bulldozer concern. But something in me cracked that night and I picked up. Cecil. Her voice was steady. Too steady. I'm here, I whispered. I know you're drowning, but you need to listen. Pause. There are people trying to get access to Maya's trust. My stomach tightened. What kind of access? The dangerous kind, she said. The kind that pretends to help you manage assets while slowly carving pieces off when you're too numb to notice. I sat down on the edge of the bed. The city lights blurred. Lucy Price wasn't just my manager. She was an ex-record label lawyer, a woman who'd watched too many artists lose everything while smiling faces robbed them blind. Her estate is still in probate, Lucy continued. And there's a clause, something about property she insisted remain untouched. I don't know the details yet. But I can tell you this, someone has been sniffing around the documentation. Maya's voice echoed in my head. Don't let anyone touch the land, promise me. I swallowed. Who's trying to get in? Lucy hesitated. Evelyn March has been asking questions. Of course she had. Evelyn with her velvet voice and perfectly staged compassion. Evelyn who acted like she cared about my emotional well-being while quietly expanding her influence over my brand. Evelyn who once called Maya's farm a waste of perfectly valuable real estate. She says she wants to help protect your legacy, Lucy added. But Cecil, she's not protecting anything, she's positioning herself. I sighed into the sterile air of the hotel room. Lucy, I'm tired. I know you are, she said softly. But tired men lose everything when they stop paying attention. Let me help you. Her tone shifted, legal, sharp-edged. I'm filing a protective notice. I'm locking down the trust, but I need you to promise me something. What? Don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. Don't let anyone talk you into shortcuts. And stay away from industry events until we get this sorted. Ironically, 3 months later, I let Evelyn talk me into attending Riverside Hall, the very event where she'd twist the knife publicly. I remember looking around that luxurious hotel suite, the leather sofa, the chilled champagne, the half-open balcony doors letting in a breeze that felt colder than winter. This life, this glamorous, glittering world suddenly felt hollow. A theater built on lies, a stage without meaning. The only place that had ever felt real, the farm, remained locked, untouched, waiting for me to listen to Maya's final plea. And now, between grief predators and the tightening noose of rumors, both my public voice and Maya's legacy were slipping through my fingers. Something had to break, something had to be revealed. I just didn't know it would all explode under the lights of Riverside Hall. The flashes started the moment my car door opened. Red carpet bulbs erupted like a storm of white fire, each one popping against my eyes with mechanical precision. I stepped out slowly, pulling a practiced smile across my face, the kind performers wear when their insides are unraveling but the world demands poise. Reporters leaned over the velvet ropes, microphones stretching toward me like eager hands. "Cecil, how does it feel receiving tonight's honor? Will you be performing a tribute to Maya? Are the rumors true about your hiatus ending?" Rumors, awards, tributes, noise, none of it mattered. I moved through the carpet like a passenger in my own body, waves of applause washing up against me and falling away forgot. Every surface sparkled diamond jewelry, sequin gowns, marble floors polished enough to reflect entire lives back at you. And yet none of it felt real. What did feel real was a pressure building in my chest, a warning, a tension I couldn't name. At the end of the carpet stood Evelyn March, dressed in a shimmering gold gown that made her look like a human spotlight. She greeted me with open arms, warm eyes, a smile that stretched just a little too tightly. "There you are," she said, kissing my cheek. "Everyone's waiting for you." I nodded, but something in her tone prickled, something already rehearsed. Inside Riverside Hall, the audience of celebrities, executives, and influencers buzzed like a restless hive. My name appeared on screens. A countdown began for my introduction. I could hear the host's voice echoing, "Tonight, we honor a man whose music shaped a generation." But then the slightest ripple, a shift backstage, movement where there shouldn't have been any. Evelyn stepped toward the stage. That wasn't planned. I watched from the wings, confused, as she took the mic from the host with the grace of someone performing a coup disguised as charity. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "before we continue tonight's program, there's something I must bring to your attention." The room stiffened. Phones rose instinctively. The livestream viewer count jumped in real time. My stomach turned as Evelyn pressed a hand against her chest in a practiced gesture of sorrow. I truly wish that this wasn't necessary, but transparency matters and the truth always deserves the light. I felt the blood drain from my face. "Oh no, not here, not tonight." Evelyn inhaled dramatically. "Cecil Scott, as beloved as he is, has not been fully honest about the state of his late wife Maya's estate." The crowd buzzed, a low, shocked murmur rolling across rows of glittering gowns. She continued, voice trembling just enough to look real. "Documents suggest mismanagement, redirected funds, a misuse of the trust she left behind." Gasps exploded like popcorn. Someone shouted, "Is he being investigated?" Another voice whispered, "I knew something was off." My throat tightened as eyes everywhere pivoted toward me, hunting, judging, dissecting. Evelyn wasn't finished. "For the sake of integrity," she said, "I can't allow this to remain hidden." Cameras swung in my direction, livestream comments flooded in. My heart hammered, but my face remained carved from stone. Then came the worst part, the line that cut deeper than any accusation. Evelyn looked directly at the audience, then at me, her mouth curling around the words like poison-coated sugar. "He wasn't the man she thought he was." For a moment, everything went silent, even the air stopped moving. Then chaos. The ballroom erupted into noise, speculation, and outrage, but I didn't speak. Didn't protest, didn't defend myself. I simply set my champagne glass down with a steady hand, turned and walked out, letting the world explode behind me. Sometimes dignity is not in what you say, it's in what you refuse to perform. And tonight I refused to give Evelyn the spectacle she wanted. The cold hit me first. When the ballroom doors shut behind me, the night air wrapped around my throat like a hand tightening just enough to remind me I was still alive. I walked across the slick pavement toward my car, the distant roar of the gala muffled by rain beginning to patter against the canopy overhead. By the time I slid into the driver's seat, the storm had strengthened into a steady, whispering sheet, soft but relentless. Droplets gathered on the windshield, trembling for a moment before streaking downward like tiny racing tears. The engine hummed beneath me, low and steady, a sound far calmer than the hurricane inside my chest. I gripped the steering wheel with both hands. My knuckles went white. Shame sat in my throat like a stone, heavy, choking, impossible to swallow. Humiliation still clung to my skin, warm and electric, as if Evelyn's lies had been branded into me. I replayed her words, each one cutting deeper than the last. He wasn't the man she thought he was. The rain grew louder, drumming against the roof in uneven rhythms. My heart beat to the same erratic pattern. I pulled in a sharp breath and finally whispered the name I needed most. Lucy. My fingers fumbled for my phone. I tapped her contact and the screen lit my face in a pale, trembling glow. It rang only once. Cecil. She answered instantly. Her voice was sharp, alert. She must have seen the live stream. Please tell me you're somewhere safe. I'm in my car, I said, swallowing hard. Outside the hall. A shaky exhale crackled through the speaker. I saw everything. I'm so sorry. She lowered her voice. They wanted a reaction from you. You did the right thing by walking out. I don't feel like I did anything right, I muttered. What Evelyn said, none of it was true, but she didn't care about truth. She cared about spectacle, and she got it. Rain thudded harder, thunder groaned somewhere far off. I leaned my head back against the cold leather seat. Lucy. Maya tried to tell me something before she died about the land, the farm. I ignored it. I kept telling myself I'd deal with it when the grief softened. Cecil, that was my mistake, I said, cutting her off gently. My biggest mistake. A long silence stretched between us, filled only by the whisper of rain and the ticking of the engine. I need to go there, I said finally. Tonight. Lucy inhaled sharply. Cecil, don't, not alone, not in the state you're in. Please, I have to, I insisted. I'm done sitting still while other people twist her memory. I'm done letting Evelyn speak for me. Maya said the land mattered. She begged me to protect it. You don't even know what's waiting for you there. I know, I said quietly. But whatever Maya feared, whatever she was trying to shield, it's connected. Evelyn all but admitted it on stage without even realizing she did. Lucy's voice grew urgent. Listen to me, don't do anything rash. Let me come to you. Let me think through the legal angle if you go storming off now. I'm not storming, I whispered, and it was true. I felt something new settling into me, replacing shame's sting with cold clarity. Resolve, controlled, quiet, dangerous. I'm activating the promise I made her, I said. Tonight. Lucy's voice broke slightly. Cecil, please, let me help you. You will, I said softly, but I have to take the first step alone. For a moment neither of us spoke. Then Lucy exhaled and whispered, okay, but call me the moment you get there, no exceptions. I will, I said. I hung up. The rain eased for a brief moment, like the night was holding its breath. I shifted the car into drive. The headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the empty road stretching ahead, a road I'd avoided for far too long. Maya's last words echoed in my mind, soft but unignorable. Don't let anyone touch the land, promise me. Tonight I was finally keeping that promise, even if I had to break everything else to do it. The city lights turned into smudges as I drove, streaks of gold, red, and white stretching across the windshield like someone dragging a brush through wet paint. Rain softened the world outside, blurring traffic lights into floating orbs while my wipers kept rhythm like a tired metronome. The farther I drove from Riverside Hall, the less human everything felt. No applause, no cameras, no curated smiles, just me, the road, and the ghost of a woman I loved more than anyone alive. My phone rested on the dashboard, screen dimmed, but Lucy's last words echoed in my mind. Don't do anything rash. Too late for that. I wasn't driving toward danger blindly. I was driving toward a truth I'd already been avoiding for a year. A truth locked behind a gate I had promised to protect. A soft melody drifted into my head, Maya's favorite refrain, the one she hummed while cooking, while brushing her hair, while tending to her small balcony plants in the early mornings. Hold the land, hold the light, her voice was soft, always soft. I tightened my grip on the wheel. Hold the land, I repeated under my breath. She had been trying to tell me something, begging me in her own gentle way. A sudden flashback hit me, a small domestic scene. Maya at the farmhouse kitchen table, her fingers tracing the rim of her teacup, eyes unfocused. Cecil, people don't always want the music. Sometimes they want what stands behind it. I hadn't understood then. I thought she meant fame, attention, industry, politics. But now I realized she meant something else entirely. The highway curved, leading me out of the city and into long stretches of rural dark. The rain thinned, becoming a light drizzle. Fog rose from the pavement in low, rolling waves that caught my headlights and glowed like pale smoke. Lucy texted. The screen lit the dashboard. Lucy, working now. Sending emergency preservation order to probate judge. Locking down everything tied to asset line marked farm estate. Will update. Another message came seconds later. Lucy also scanning Evelyn's PR blast. She planned this. Hard proof required ASAP. The legal seed had been planted. Whatever Evelyn thought she'd gain from smearing me, she would soon learn Maya left me more protection than anyone realized, starting with Lucy. I typed a short reply while parked at a red light. Me, keep going. I'll find what Maya wanted me to see. Before I could hit send, a green arrow flicked on and the car behind me honked. I hit send, accelerated, and continued the drive deeper into the outskirts where the streetlights grew sparse and the air smelled faintly of wet earth. Another flashback surfaced, Maya standing at the edge of the farm's field, wind tugging at her braid. Promise me, she'd whispered. I promise, I said easily, too easily. Back then I didn't understand that promises don't expire even when people do. I glanced at the folded map sprawled across the passenger seat, an old paper map I kept for nostalgia, though tonight it felt like a lifeline. I traced the route with my eyes, a winding road leading to a hollow near Miller's Bend, then a dirt path ending at a single dot labeled only as Scott Farm Private. My headlights cut through a long, empty stretch. The hum of tires against pavement grew hypnotic. As miles rolled beneath me, my vow hardened. I wasn't just driving to a location. I was driving to a truth Maya died trying to protect. Something she feared, something she didn't trust anyone else with. And the phrase she whispered on her last night, the one that had seemed like delirium back then, now pulsed like a heartbeat in my skull. Go to the land before they do. I didn't know who they were, but I knew one thing: Evelyn had already made her move. Tonight I was making mine. With a steady breath and a tightening jaw, I whispered into the empty car, "All right, Maya, I'm coming. I'm going to find the gate." And for the first time since the humiliation at the gala, I felt something sharp and real ignite in my chest, not anger, not fear. Resolve, cold, controlled resolve, the kind that changes everything. Dusk was folding itself over the land by the time I reached the edge of the farm. The last stretch of road narrowed into a winding lane lined with tall, swaying grass. My headlights swept across the field in long silver arcs, revealing patches of wildflowers and uneven ground glistening from the earlier rain. Then I saw it, the gate, exactly as Maya had described it in those rare, vulnerable moments when she let herself talk about the place. A wide, weather-beaten wooden structure held together by rusted hinges and stubborn history. The padlock, old brass, dented, scarred by time, hung from a thick loop of chain wrapped twice around the posts. Moss crept up the sides. A small, cracked sign hung from a single nail: "No trespass, private land." The words were ghostly, faded by sun and storms alike. I rolled down the window and breathed in damp soil. Grass after rain, a scent that carried the memory of summer nights and simpler truths. Crickets chirped in the field, their rhythm steady and patient, as if they'd been waiting for me. A soft breeze slid across my face, cool and earthy, carrying with it the faintest hum, the hush of a place untouched. I stepped out of the car. Gravel crunched beneath my shoes. When I reached the gate, I ran my fingers along the chain, feeling the cool bite of metal. The padlock resisted when I tugged it, solid, unmoving. Maya's voice floated back to me. If you ever go without me, you'll know what to do. I wasn't sure what she meant then. But now, standing here in the falling dusk, I understood something deeper. She never expected the world to protect this place. She expected me to. I scanned the gate for a keyhole, nothing, only rust and splintered wood. My eyes drifted to the fence line, then to the old oak tree leaning slightly to the left. Its branches hung low, almost touching the gate. And then I saw it, a small, weathered birdhouse nailed crookedly to the trunk. A trinket I remembered from my first visit years ago, chipped blue paint, a tiny circular opening, a roof that looked like it had survived 100 storms. It shouldn't have stood out. But suddenly it did. I stepped closer, pressed my fingers along the edge. And there, beneath the peeling paint, I felt it, a hidden seam. My heart kicked. I lifted the small wooden roof, and inside, tucked against the back panel, was a tiny metal plate with a keyhole carved into its center. A keyhole disguised as part of the birdhouse frame, Maya's secret mechanism. She must have put it here herself, a lock for those who didn't belong, a quiet invitation for the one person she trusted. I reached inside and found a slender key wrapped in a piece of twine, still dry despite the rain. My chest tightened. The twine was tied in a knot I recognized instantly, Maya's habit of looping the ends into a small bow. She wanted me to find this. She planned for me to find this. As I walked back to the gate, slipped the key into the padlock, and turned. It clicked open with a groan, a tired sound like an old door exhaling. The chain fell away, heavy but obedient. The gate creaked as I pushed it inward, revealing a long dirt path leading into the property, framed by tall grass and shadows stretching like reaching hands. I stepped across the threshold. The crickets quieted, the breeze shifted. And for a moment everything felt suspended, as if the land itself recognized me. I walked forward slowly, my breath catching in the cool evening air. Whatever Maya had been hiding, whatever she feared, whatever truth she carried alone, I was finally walking into it. Into her secret. The farmhouse stood quiet at the end of the dirt path, its silhouette rising out of the dusk like an old memory. White paint peeled from the siding, the porch sagged a little at the center, and the windows reflected nothing but the last thin strip of twilight. It looked abandoned but not unloved. I stepped onto the porch. The boards groaned under my weight the same way they used to creak under Maya's. I ran my hand along the railing and the wood felt familiar, as if it had kept the warmth of her touch all this time. The front door resisted for a second before clicking open. Inside, the air smelled like cedar and dust and the faintest trace of Maya's perfume, lavender and something earthy she used to buy from small-town shops during tour. My throat tightened. The living room was small, cozy, nothing like the polished city spaces we spent most of our time in. There was a patchwork couch, shelves packed with books, and a coffee table cluttered with sheet music and receipts. A place she worked, a place she breathed. A place she kept separate from everything else. I noticed right away the brass plaque by the doorway, Maya's Rest. But underneath it, nailed into the wood at a slight angle, was another older sign, Harbor Farm, 2 names, one hers, one belonging to whatever life this land lived before us. I moved deeper inside. Photographs lined the hallway, not the glamorous tour shots or Grammy night pictures everyone else saw. These were different. These were private. Maya in muddy boots. Maya holding a lamb. Maya laughing in the kitchen with her hair tied up in a scarf. Maya alone on the porch, silhouetted against a sunrise. I stopped at one photo, the two of us leaning against the barn door, covered in flour from the peach cobbler disaster we once pretended was intentional. I touched the frame. "I should have come back here with you," I whispered, my voice broke. In the small office at the back of the house, I found boxes stacked neatly, each labeled in Maya's handwriting. Taxes, tour prep, legal, personal. I opened the one marked personal. Inside were journals, leather-bound, edges worn, pages carefully filled with her handwriting, dates going back years. Notes about the crops, about the staff she trusted here, about songs she wrote but never released, and then a ledger. A thick, canvas-bound book. I opened it. Columns of numbers, receipts, transfers, some familiar, some not, but what stopped me wasn't the ledger. It was the small digital recorder clipped to the inside cover. A recorder I didn't know she even owned. I pressed play. Nothing encrypted. A password prompt flashed on the tiny screen. I searched the box, my pulse rising. Beneath a stack of folders was a sealed envelope with my name on it. Cecil, for when you're ready. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a short note. If you found this, then something went wrong sooner than it should have. Use the date we met, that's the code. My breath caught. I keyed in the numbers. The recorder clicked, then a soft crackle filled the room, followed by Maya's voice, her real voice. Gentle, tired, unguarded. Cecil, if you're hearing this, I didn't get the chance to tell you in person. I've been watching the accounts. Evelyn and her partners, they're not just mismanaging. They're laundering money through fake management deals, using the farm's registration to hide the transfers. I felt the blood drain from my face. Her voice grew faint, shaky. I didn't want to burden you while you were touring, but they're closing in and I'm scared the farm isn't the only thing they want. Silence, then softly, I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. Please protect what's ours. The recorder clicked off. I sank into the chair, the weight of her words crashing through me. Shock, guilt, clarity. Maya had known. She had tried to warn me. And Evelyn, smiling, polished, poisonous Evelyn, had played a much deeper game. I closed the ledger softly, my hand steadying. For the first time since Maya died, I knew exactly what I had to do. The farmhouse office was dim, lit only by the thin beam of my phone's flashlight. Dust floated through the air like slow, drifting snowfall. After listening to Maya's message, the silence around me felt heavier, almost purposeful, as if the room itself were waiting for me to take the next step. I set the journals down carefully. Something inside me whispered that Maya hadn't just left clues, she had built a trail. And then I noticed it. A wooden box on the top shelf, pushed far back, almost invisible in the shadows. Too clean, too deliberate. I pulled it down. It wasn't a keepsake box. It wasn't labeled. It had a false bottom. Inside was a compact camera rig, small, matte black, professionally wired, with time-stamped memory cards stacked neatly beside it. Maya, what were you doing? I plugged the camera into my laptop, breath held as the folders loaded. The screen flickered, footage, weeks of it, all automatically recorded, all named by date and location. I clicked the first one labeled Barn Office After Visit. The video opened to a grainy shot of the barn interior, captured from a discreet angle near the rafters. Maya stood at her desk, her face tense, running a hand through her hair. I don't trust them anymore, she whispered to herself. I shouldn't have let Evelyn come here. She pulled open drawers, checking files, counting envelopes as if verifying something hadn't been stolen. My heart twisted. I clicked the next file's cafe downtown. This one was clearer, probably captured from a distance with a zoom lens Maya had hidden somewhere. Evelyn sat at an outdoor table, sunglasses on despite the shade, leaning forward with that same polished smile she wore on every red carpet. Across from her, Marcus Velez, her longtime business partner, a numbers man with a shark's quiet patience. Their voices were low, but the mic Maya used must have been good. Marcus said, "The foundation account is still untouched. If we can reposition the assets by the end of the quarter, nobody will question it." Evelyn sipped her latte like she was discussing interior decor rather than theft. And Cecil? Marcus asked. Evelyn waved a hand dismissively. He's deflectable, emotional, still grieving. He'll sign anything if you phrase it like it's protecting Maya's legacy. My jaw locked. Marcus chuckled. And if he pushes back? Evelyn shrugged. Then we question his stability. The industry already sees him as fragile. It won't be hard to redirect the narrative. I paused the video, breath heavy. They had planned this. Every smile, every "I'm here for you," every lie. A cold fury settled in my bones. I clicked another video. Estate office, 1:23 a.m. A man entered the farm's small administrative building under the cover of night. I recognized him instantly. The estate manager, Tom Breyer, a friendly man I'd trusted for years, or thought I had, but he wasn't alone. Marcus Velez followed him inside, carrying a stack of papers. I turned up the volume. Tom whispered, "Are you sure this will work?" Marcus replied, "Plant the invoice. Make it look like a routine repair order, roofing, electrical, whatever. Once the paperwork cycles through, we route funds through the shell company. No one will notice the transfer." Tom hesitated. "But she's your friend." Evelyn's voice floated in from the doorway. She had joined them. "She's an obstacle," she said coldly, "and obstacles don't get sentimental consideration." I felt my stomach turn. This wasn't mismanagement. This was organized theft, conspiracy, betrayal in its coldest form. I copied every file, every second, every whisper. Then I composed a message to Lucy. "I found proof, real proof, sending now." The files transferred one by one, progress bars crawling across the screen like slow-burning fuses. My pulse thudded in my ears. This was it. Concrete evidence, criminal intent, names, dates, ledgers, footage. Everything Maya had been trying to tell me. And as the last file uploaded, one realization struck me harder than any slap Evelyn could have delivered. They weren't just coming for Maya's legacy. They were coming for mine, and now I had the power to burn their scheme to the ground. I reached the edge of the city just as my phone buzzed again. 3 messages from Lucy, each more urgent than the last. "Cecil, call me now. We have enough to file. The cavalry is moving." I dialed her and she picked up on the first ring. "I've filed an emergency preservation order," she said without greeting. "The court stamped it 10 minutes ago. We have jurisdiction to seize documents, freeze accounts, and demand immediate compliance from Evelyn's entire management circle." Her voice was the kind of calm people earn only after 20 years of fighting sharks in corporate waters. "And Cecil," she added, "I didn't come alone. I heard engines behind her, deep, coordinated, expensive. Where are you?" I asked. 2 minutes from Riverside Hall," she replied, "and so are you." She wasn't wrong. As I turned onto 73rd, the building loomed ahead, bright, glittering, full of people who had watched me get humiliated. But now something else filled the street, 3 black SUVs, moving in perfect formation. They slowed to a stop under the awning, their headlights slicing through the misting rain like searchlights. The engines didn't purr, they growled, low and controlled, like predators waiting for a signal. The first door opened. Lucy stepped out. She wasn't dressed for TV lights or interviews. She wore a charcoal suit with a binder tucked under one arm, thick, heavy, and secured with red legal tabs. Her hair was pinned back and her expression could have cut glass. The second SUV opened. Out came Marcus, the forensic accountant she trusted more than anyone. He clutched a laptop bag like it contained the truth itself. 2 associates followed, young, sharp, nervous, but ready. Their eyes flashed between their tablets and the looming hall doors. Lucy spotted me pulling up. She didn't wave. She didn't smile. She just nodded, a silent acknowledgement that everything I had brought her, every file, every late-night text, every broken piece of the puzzle had been enough. I stepped out of my car, the cool rain tapping the hood in a nervous, impatient rhythm. Lucy walked to me, binder clutched tight. "Cecil," she said quietly, "we have them." She opened the binder just enough for me to see the top page, court order, emergency injunction, and asset preservation. My name was printed at the top. So was Evelyn S. and Marcus Velez S. and Tom Breyer's. "This gives us full authority," Lucy continued. "We go in, we present the order, we serve the notices. We freeze the accounts, they can't hide a cent." Her heels clicked against the wet pavement, sharp, precise, purposeful. Behind her, Marcus lifted his tablet, scanning through the raw data I'd sent. "It's airtight," he said. "They're done." The rain thickened, tapping against the SUVs like a drumline. Lucy closed the binder. "You ready?" she asked. I looked toward the glowing doors of Riverside Hall, the same place I'd walked out of in humiliation, the sting of Evelyn's words still burning in my ears. But this time I wasn't alone, I wasn't unarmed. I wasn't the man she thought she could break. I nodded. Let's finish what Maya started. We moved away from the lights of Riverside Hall and slipped into the narrow alley beside the adjoining hotel, a space dimly lit by a single flickering bulb. The night smelled of wet pavement, cold metal, and the faint sweetness of discarded flowers from the gala's Dacre crew. Behind us, the muffled roar of music and chatter pulsed like a distant heartbeat. Lucy opened her binder, not dramatically, not theatrically, just with the quiet certainty of someone who knew this moment was inevitable. Inside were neatly stacked documents separated by color-coded tabs. She handed me the top set. Emergency injunction, she said. Signed active, they cannot legally destroy or alter any file connected to the estate. Another stack slid forward. These are freeze notices. Once inside, I'll serve them publicly. They shut down Evelyn's accounts, Marcus's shell companies, and every pipeline they built. She pulled out one more folder, thinner but somehow heavier. And this, she added, is our plan for the reveal. A controlled reveal, timing, sequence, screens, audio, everything designed not just to expose the truth, but to level the entire room with it. The alley behind us shifted as 6 security staff took their positions, 2 by the back entrance, 2 flanking the hall's loading dock, 2 stationed at the stairwell. Their radios crackled softly, tension thickening the air. Marcus, the forensic accountant, approached with a tablet in hand. Files are queued, he said. When Lucy gives the signal, the screen flips from the gala slideshow to Maya's footage. No one can cut the feed without shutting down the entire system. Meaning? I asked. Meaning, Lucy said, Evelyn can't talk her way out of this. I looked down at the binder in my hands, my name, Maya's name, the farm, the numbers, the signatures, everything that mattered was pressed into those pages. A thin drizzle began to fall again, tapping softly against the dumpster lids and metal railings. Rain always seemed to find me on nights when the truth demanded something. Lucy stepped closer. Cecil, she said gently, once you walk through those doors, this won't just be about clearing your name. It will reshape your reputation, destroy theirs, and put a spotlight on everything Maya tried to protect. Her voice lowered. If you walk away now, the slander sticks. Evelyn wins. The industry writes the narrative, a beat, but if you walk in, you take back the story. I stared toward the glowing service entrance, the doorway into the hall, the crowd, the cameras, the judgment, the place I had fled only an hour earlier. And then I felt it, the shift, not rage, not fear, resolve. The same resolve Maya had carried when she hid the key, when she left the warning, when she trusted me with the land. I tightened my grip on the binder. I'm going in, I said quietly. Lucy nodded once, like she had been waiting for me to come home to myself. Then let's draw the line, she said, and together we walked toward the door. The moment we pushed open the service door, a blast of music and chatter hit us, the gala in full swing again, unaware that its center was about to collapse. Lucy gave a nod to security. The 2 guards flanked us, and we moved through the hallway like a silent wave cutting toward the stage. Then it happened. The ballroom doors slammed open. The sound cracked through the hall like thunder. Conversations froze. Music stuttered, then died mid-note. Even the live stream flickered, its feed hiccuping under the sudden interruption. Every head turned. And there I was, the man they thought had run away in shame, walking back in with a binder in hand and a team behind me. Evelyn stood at the podium, a champagne flute raised, her lips forming the start of another practiced speech. When she saw me, the glass slipped slightly in her fingers. Lucy stepped forward first. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, voice amplified with perfect clarity, this event is now under legal hold. Before anyone could react, the main screen behind Evelyn, still displaying the gala graphics, glitched once, twice, then switched entirely. The footage began to play, Maya's hidden camera, the cafe meeting, Evelyn's voice calling me deflectable. Marcus Velez discussing asset repositioning. Tom Breyer planting fake invoices at 1:23 a.m. The ballroom erupted into horrified murmurs. Someone gasped so sharply it echoed. Glasses clinked against tables. A phone slipped from someone's hand and clattered onto the marble floor. Evelyn spun toward the screen, her composure cracking like thin ice under weight. "Turn that off," she snapped. "Cut it, cut it." But Marcus, pale now, leaned toward her urgently. "We can't," he whispered. "It's overriding." Lucy raised the court order high. "Effective immediately," she announced. "All accounts tied to these parties are frozen under judicial authority. All documents will be seized, and all attempts to interfere with evidence will be prosecuted." The room descended into chaos. Evelyn's supporters surged toward the stage to defend her, but the footage kept rolling, damning them with every second. Their words, their schemes, their betrayal. Marcus Velez tried to speak over it. "This doesn't prove intent. This is taken out of con." "Silence," Lucy said, her voice colder than steel. "You're finished." The crowd shifted, the tide turning. Sympathy evaporated, shock hardened into judgment. Evelyn lunged for the mic, voice cracking. "He's lying." "Cecil is he's." I stepped forward for the first time. The lights caught my face. The room went still again. I didn't shout, I didn't accuse, I simply said, "Maya trusted the land, I trusted you, only one of you deserved it." Silence, then a collective exhale, sharp, devastating. Evelyn's face twisted, her control snapping entirely as officers entered from the side doors, moving toward her and Marcus. The takedown had begun, and the humiliation she crafted for me now belonged to her. By the time the last officer walked Evelyn out of Riverside Hall, her gold gown looked less like evening glamour and more like a costume stripped of meaning. Marcus Velez followed behind her, shouting about misinterpretations and pending counsel, but no one listened, not the guests. Not the live stream audience. Not even the journalists who had rushed to the barricades with cameras flashing like lightning, because the truth was louder. Within minutes, social feeds flipped from scandal to revelation. "Stand with Cecil" trended before I even left the building. Clips of the footage, Maya's footage, spread like wildfire. Her voice, fragile but resolute, filled the internet. And just like that, the narrative Evelyn tried to write for me burned to ash. But the victory didn't feel triumphant. It felt quiet, necessary, earned. By the time dawn approached, I was driving back toward the farm, headlights cutting through fog. The adrenaline had drained from my body, leaving a heavy, aching stillness. I rolled down the window as I approached the property, letting the early morning air wash over me, cold, clean, unfiltered. Lucy arrived 20 minutes later, her car crunching softly across the gravel. She climbed out carrying a folder instead of a binder, this time's lighter, more hopeful. "This is everything we talked about," she said, handing it to me. "The foundation documents, asset protections, trusteeship structures, it's all here." I opened the folder. "Maya Scott, Foundation for Rural Arts and Sanctuary Est." Today, her name at the top, my signature line below it. "The land preserved, its purpose protected." "Are you sure you want to do this?" Lucy asked gently. "It's a big shift." I nodded. This was her dream, I said. I think she was trying to make sure I'd carry it forward when she couldn't." We stepped toward the barn, the same weathered structure from our old photographs. The sunrise crept over the horizon, painting everything gold. Light spilled across the wood, across the fields, across the quiet space that had held her secrets and her fears. I signed the documents with steady hands. Lucy watched me, then placed her hand over the final page. "She'd be proud," she whispered. When she drove away, leaving me alone with the dawn, I walked into the barn. Dust danced in the beams of early sunlight. The air smelled faintly of hay, cedar, and something softer, memory. I stood in the center of the empty space and let myself breathe, truly breathe. Then, without planning to, I started humming. It was that refrain Maya loved, the one she sang in small moments, the one I hadn't sung since she died. "Hold the land, hold the light." The notes wavered at first, then grew steadier, warmer. It felt like my voice, my real voice, had come home after a long exile. When the last note faded, I whispered into the quiet, "Your last words finally make sense, Maya." And in that moment, I felt whole again,